Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are taking a really close look at something that's, well, fundamentally changing how we work, how we learn, how we interact with the world, really. Artificial intelligence.
It really is
It
everywhere.
feels like every single day, there's a new AI tool popping up, right? Another platform, another app, another workflow you have to learn.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It can honestly feel like you're just constantly trying to catch your breath.
Hmm.
So this deep dive, it's built around a really insightful lecture note. It's called From Tool User to Tool Maker Ethos of CAFA.
Right, by Jae Choi at George Washington University,
Right.
who's also leading this CAFA initiative.
Exactly. And the core idea here, the one that really grabbed me, is that dealing with this AI wave,
Yeah.
it isn't just about learning how to, use the latest gadget.
No, it's much deeper than that. It's a call for a pretty profound shift, actually, moving from being passive tool users.
Becoming active tool makers.
Precisely.
Okay, so our mission today is to figure out why. Why is this shift so critical? We're going to dive into the very real risks of not making that shift
Yeah, the downside.
and explore the fascinating philosophy behind it, this idea that we're kind of fundamentally built to create things.
Homo faber concept.
Right. And then we'll look at how this CAFA initiative that's pronounced like Kappa,
Yeah,
right?
like CAPA,
How that provides a concrete way to actually do this, to make that transition yourself.
the practical path forward.
So get ready, because this might just challenge how you think about those digital tools you're interacting with, maybe without even thinking about it, every single day.
Should be interesting.
Okay, so let's start with that feeling, this technological vertigo, being swamped by all the new AI tools.
It's overwhelming.
And for professionals, there's definitely this undercurrent of anxiety. Like, is my job next? Will I be obsolete if I don't master a new AI thing?
That fear is real.
So the instinct is often just, okay, I need to get really good at using these tools. But you're saying, and the source argues, that staying in that user mode, it actually carries pretty significant risks.
It absolutely does. I mean, look, being proficient with tools is valuable, no question. But this note makes a really strong case that just being a tool user is fundamentally passive.
Passive, how so?
Well, most of the AI tools we encounter are finished products, right? Often kind of black boxes. You interact with the interface, you get results, but you don't really see the inner workings.
Okay.
And that limits you. Think about the analogy in the note, the cook using only pre-made sauces.
Right, you remember that?
You might get really clever at combining those sauces, maybe adding a garnish. But your creativity, the final dish, it's always constrained by what the sauce manufacturer decided to put in the jar.
Your innovation is capped by their vision.
Exactly. Your potential is limited by someone else's goals and design choices. And this passive approach, the source argues, leads to some serious cascading risks down the line.
Cascading risks. Okay, that sounds concerning. Let's unpack the first one mentioned, deskilling and deepening dependency. How does just using an AI tool actually wear away at our own skills?
It happens gradually, almost sneakily at first. When you start outsourcing core professional tasks that require judgment, think a doctor relying heavily on AI for diagnosis, or a journalist using AI to draft initial reports.
Or the teacher example, using AI for grading essays.
Precisely. That teacher example is key. If an educator only uses an AI grader, they might slowly lose that incredibly nuanced ability to spot a student's unique voice, or track their development over time, or pick up on the subtle ways a student is really grappling with an idea.
The stuff a machine might miss.
Exactly. The human insights you only get from deep engagement, your own craft, your expertise, it can start to atrophy.
And that builds dependency.
A deep dependency. What happens if that platform changes its pricing? Or shifts its features, or the company just disappears? Entire professions could find themselves really vulnerable.
So it's not just about efficiency. It's about potentially losing the core expertise, the craft itself. And this connects to the second risk you mentioned, loss of agency and this idea of algorithmic colonization.
It flows directly from that dependency. Because these external tools, they aren't neutral. They're built by someone, often corporations, with specific values, specific assumptions, maybe even biases baked right in.
And often driven by a business model.
Absolutely. So when we adopt these tools wholesale, we risk letting the tool's internal logic start dictating our practices, forcing us to conform to its way of doing things.
Rather than letting our practices be driven by, say, what's best for our students or our patients or our clients, or our own professional ethics.
Exactly that. The note uses that educational assessment example again. If a district adopts an assessment tool that's brilliant at grading multiple choice questions quickly,
Because that's easier for the algorithm.
right, they might find themselves incentivized, maybe even pressured, to use more multiple choice tests, even if the educators know that essays or projects are way better for assessing deep understanding in their subject.
So they end up teaching to the test, or rather teaching to the algorithm's strengths.
You got it. And that's what the source calls algorithmic colonization. It's this generic, often commercially driven perspective getting imposed everywhere, flattening out local needs, unique professional judgments, ethical nuances. You basically lose the agency to decide how you do your job, how you practice your craft.
Wow. Algorithmic colonization.
Yeah.
That really paints a picture, an external force reshaping your world without you really choosing it.
Mm.
And the third risk ties into the data we generate while using these tools.
Yes, what the note terms data feudalism. Think about all the incredibly valuable data generated through professional work, student progress data, patient interaction notes, market research findings.
It's a huge asset.
Absolutely. But when we use these third-party platforms, we often end up like digital peasants working land owned by someone else.
Okay, beta feudalism. I get it.
The platforms collect, store, analyze all this data we generate. But we, the users, typically don't own it or control it fully.
We might just see dashboards they give us.
Exactly. Curated summaries. Meanwhile, the platform owners are profiting from our data, using it to train their next AI model, build new features, gain market insights. This valuable, often publicly generated data gets privatized. The corporations benefit hugely, while the communities of professionals who actually created that value, they see little return and lose control.
So just being a user means risking your skills, your professional autonomy, and the ownership of your own valuable data. It makes total sense then that movements like TEAM, the Teacher-Empowered Assessment movement, are highlighted as a response, people trying to break that dependency.
Absolutely. Team is shown as a prime example of experts standing up and saying, wait a second, we need to build solutions that reflect our knowledge, our values, our students' needs. It's about actively taking back control, not just passively adapting.
Okay, that clearly lays out the dangers of staying on the user path. But the real heart of this lecture note is the alternative, embracing the role of the tool maker. And that this isn't just about learning Python or something, is it? There seems to be a much deeper philosophical idea driving this.
Oh, absolutely. It's rooted right in how we understand what it means to be human. The note draws heavily on this idea of Homo faber, man the maker.
Not just Homo sapiens, wise man.
Exactly. Thinkers like Henri Bergson argued that our defining trait isn't just our capacity for abstract thought, but this innate, powerful drive we have to create, to build, to shape our world, to make things.
So intelligence isn't just thinking, it's doing. It's acting on the world.
For Bergson, absolutely. Intelligence is fundamentally active, geared towards creation. We understand the world, in large part by intervening in it, by building tools that extend our abilities and help us solve problems.
And it's a two-way street, right? We make tools, but the tools also make us.
That's the crucial extension from thinkers like Leroy Gorhan and more recently Lembros Meliforis. They stress this dynamic, cyclical relationship.
Like the sharpened flint, changing the hand, and maybe even the brain.
Precisely. Meliforis talks about how our cognition actually extends into the material things we create and use. He has that great quote, something like, "We are Homo faber not just because we make things, but because we are made by the things we make."
We are made by the things we make. That really sticks.
Mm-hmm.
So applying this to building digital tools, like an AI agent, the transformation isn't just about the final product. It's about what the process of making does to you, the maker.
It's profoundly transformative. The act of creation itself becomes this incredibly powerful engine for your own development.
Oh.
The note highlights 3 key ways this happens.
Okay, what's the first?
First, it deepens your own knowledge, massively. Let's say you decide to build an AI tool for a specific professional task. Maybe a historian building something to help analyze primary sources for certain themes. To do that, you have to take your deep, maybe intuitive kind of tacit knowledge about identifying those themes, and you have to make it explicit, formalize it.
You have to actually spell out how you do it.
Exactly. You need to define the concepts precisely. What are the relationships between them? How do you weigh different factors? You're essentially forced to create a structured representation of your own expertise, what the source calls an ontology model.
That sounds hard.
It is challenging, but also incredibly revealing. It forces you to really examine your own thinking, uncover hidden assumptions, define things rigorously. You move beyond just knowing that something is true in your field to really understanding the why and how on a much more systematic level. You gain this deeper, more formal command of your domain.
So building the tool forces you to become hyper-aware of your own expertise. Okay, what's the second transformation?
It expands your thinking. Using a finished tool often encourages what's called convergent thinking. You're finding the best way to get a specific outcome within the tool's existing limits.
Following the established path.
Right. But building a tool demands divergent thinking. You have to brainstorm possibilities, explore different ways to approach the problem, anticipate edge cases, experiment, iterate, debug.
It's much more open-ended.
Totally. It cultivates systems thinking, seeing how all the pieces fit together. It builds creative problem-solving skills and, honestly, intellectual resilience. It's the difference between following a recipe someone else wrote and actually inventing a new dish from scratch. You're operating in a much broader, more creative, intellectual space.
That makes sense. More exploration. Which seems to lead naturally to the third point, which sounds like it's about reclaiming power, strengthening your agency.
Exactly right. The note briefly references Foucault's idea of the docile body, how systems can kind of shape us to fit their needs. Passive users of tech risk becoming a bit like that, constrained by the logic someone else built into the tool.
The tool maker.
The toolmaker becomes an active subject. You are the one defining the problem based on your understanding. You set the goals according to your expertise. You design and implement the solution.
You're in charge.
Yes. And that active creation is inherently empowering. It builds confidence. It reasserts the professional expert as the authority, not the tool. It fundamentally shifts you from being just a consumer of technology to being an active author of your own work, your tools, and ultimately your professional future.
So tool making isn't just technical skill acquisition. It's this really deep, transformative experience that reshapes your relationship with knowledge, with creativity, and with your own authority as an expert. Fascinating stuff. But, okay, it sounds powerful, philosophically rich, but how do you actually do it? How does someone realistically go from being a user to a maker?
And that is precisely where the CAFA initiative, pronounced like CAPA, comes in. It's designed to provide the practical bridge, the environment, and the methodology to make that transition possible.
Moving from the why to the how.
Exactly. The core practical piece is the CAFA platform. The key insight behind it was realizing that domain experts, teachers, doctors, researchers, you name it, shouldn't have to become elite software engineers just to build AI tools that embody their specific knowledge.
Right, that's a huge barrier for most people.
So the platform is built as a low-code environment. Think visual interfaces, drag-and-drop components, structured ways of defining things. The goal is to democratize AI development, to empower anyone with deep domain knowledge and a good idea to build something meaningful without needing years of coding experience first.
Lowering that technical hurdle significantly.
Very significantly.
Yeah.
And the real engine under the hood, the core methodology that makes this work, is something called Ontology Model-centered Generation, or OMG.
OMG. Okay.
This is the mechanism that translates that deep human expertise into a working AI tool. But, and this is crucial, it keeps the human expert firmly in control.
How does it do that?
Remember that ontology model we talked about, that explicit structured map of your knowledge, your concepts, the relationships, your procedures.
Yeah, the formalized expertise.
Okay, so the OMG framework takes your human-created ontology model and uses it as the primary blueprint, the main guide, for actually generating the AI tool's logic and function.
So it's not just learning from vast amounts of data.
It's different from many conventional approaches that might rely heavily on pattern finding in huge, often opaque datasets. OMG prioritizes the structure, the intent, the knowledge explicitly defined by the human expert in their model.
So my expertise is the direct input.
Think of the cook analogy again. Your ontology model is your unique, detailed recipe. OMG is the chef, but it only uses the ingredients you specified and only follows the steps you wrote down. It doesn't substitute things or pull ideas from some generic recipe book you never saw.
Ensuring the final tool truly reflects my thinking.
Exactly. It makes the process transparent, it ensures the tool aligns with your specific expertise and values, and fundamentally it shifts the power. The domain expert becomes the intellectual author, not just the end user.
That makes a huge difference. The human provides the intelligence, the structure, the why, and the AI generation works within those bounds. And team, that teacher-empowered assessment movement, is where we see this in action.
It's the prime example given in the source, yes. You have real teachers using the CAFA platform, using OMG, maybe drawing on shared knowledge bases like Courier, which is a repository of educational concepts and standards.
Right.
And they're building these incredibly specific, tailored tools. Think of a history teacher creating an AI agent that analyzes student essays based specifically on the historical reasoning skills they defined in their ontology model, not just generic grammar
Or a
checks.
science teacher building simulations based on their unique way of teaching a particular concept.
Precisely. These aren't one-size-fits-all, off-the-shelf solutions. They're deeply personalized, reflecting the teacher's individual philosophy, their specific classroom context, the actual needs of their students.
And this whole process, working within the CAFA ecosystem, is what triggers those big shifts we talked about earlier, deepening knowledge, expanding thought, gaining agency, but in a really practical, hands-on way.
It absolutely is. It's the proving ground where those philosophical ideas become tangible experience. It facilitates that crucial shift from just consuming AI outputs to actively generating insights based on your own structured thinking.
Right.
It pushes you from that convergent, maybe repetitive thinking of just using a tool into the divergent, adaptive thinking needed to design and build one. It fundamentally changes how you relate to your own knowledge. It stops being just stuff you know and becomes a dynamic tool you wield to solve problems.
And the big one, reclaiming that authority.
Moving you from being passive and dependent to being creative, agentic, independent, reclaiming your professional authority in the face of potentially overwhelming technology.
And this reveals CAFA's larger goal then. It's
Yeah.
not just about making tools.
No, the deeper purpose seems to be fostering a whole culture centered on human expert knowledge. It's almost a universal call, whatever your field, physics, poetry, plumbing, pursue deep expertise, strive for mastery, and then take the step to formalize it, structure it.
And the source suggests that effort itself makes us better.
Yes, that this relentless pursuit of expertise, this drive to understand and structure your corner of the world, this is fundamentally what makes us better thinkers, better professionals, maybe even better humans. The technology, the platform, it becomes a medium for that core human intellectual growth.
And that creates a kind of upward spiral.
A virtuous cycle, exactly. Experts who engage in this process deepen their own understanding. They become better experts.
And better experts make better tools.
Right. More insightful, more nuanced tools, which in turn help those experts in their communities become even more effective, more capable, more innovative. Human capability drives the tech, which enhances human capability. It's a positive feedback loop.
So looking at the AI landscape now, we really are facing a choice. Path 1, stay a passive tool user, but accept those risks, deskilling, losing agency, data feudalism.
Yeah, the path of dependency.
Path 2, step up, become an active tool maker, using frameworks like CAFA perhaps, and reap those benefits, deeper expertise, broader thinking, reclaimed agency.
The maker path definitely requires more effort up front. Building is harder than using, no doubt about it.
Sure.
But the argument in the source is compelling. It's the necessary path.
Yeah.
Because the long-term risks of staying dependent, of potentially becoming obsolete, those risks are arguably far greater than the initial challenge of learning to create.
And you mentioned that personal dimension too, that intrinsic reward.
Absolutely. This isn't just about professional necessity. The journey itself is fueled by curiosity, by that innate human drive to make things, to figure things out. It delivers huge personal growth because the focus is ultimately on developing your understanding, your creativity, your mastery.
And that process itself feels good.
There's a unique kind of inner joy, a real satisfaction that comes from that act of creation, from formalizing what you know and making something new with it. It reinforces that core message we talked about.
That in making an AI for ourselves, we remake ourselves.
Exactly. Technology stops being just this external force acting on us. It becomes a medium, a powerful tool through which we can become more capable, more insightful, more creative, maybe more fully human.
That is a really powerful idea to end on. So maybe something for you, the listener, to think about this week. Pick a specific task, something in your own work or maybe even your personal life, where you currently rely on an external AI tool. Could be anything summarizing, writing, analyzing, planning. Now, just pause for a moment and imagine, what might you learn about your own expertise if you tried to design or even just conceptually outline how a tool you build would do that task?
Yeah.
What hidden knowledge, what implicit steps in your own process would you have to uncover? What unique insights or values would you build in? What core parts of your knowledge would you need to make explicit, to formalize? Just thinking about that might be revealing.
It's a great exercise.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We really hope it's given you a new perspective on the tools shaping our world and maybe your own potential role in shaping them.